Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where I've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Heroes vs Villains, episode 22. That's right, we're heading into the very last week of Australian Survivor Heroes vs Villains, and what a season it has been. I have been excited and entertained to come here weekly and talk about these top 5 takes, and it's hard to believe that I'll only be doing 2 more of these after this one, but let's get straight into it. We have the final 5 in the game, and takeaway number 1 is that being deprived of the luxuries from home can really go to your head very quickly, as we see them start off here with coffee and muffins, and it's a fun scene before the cutting and strategizing has to happen within this episode. I couldn't do what George did with that full teaspoon of sugar that he ate. I don't have sugar in my coffee either. I'm not a big sugar person in general, but clearly having been deprived of these things, these luxuries from home, is something that I wouldn't understand, having not been out there for 47 days plus, not having food or not having sugar or coffee or muffins. But it was a fun scene to see them all just enjoy, and how much this affected their state of mind in the game so late on in the game. The editors also had a blast with the editing, and sort of it kind of hyped up how much of this caffeine rush they were having in the game, which I thought was really fun scene. But we go into takeaway number 2, which is straight into the strategy. Liz tells us that now is the time to make a move against Matt in the game. She looks at Matt as that only person in the game that potentially could take her out if she was to go up against him in an immunity challenge. She also brings up the fact that, as per the last tribal council, Jerry and George clearly has a very deep and strong bond in the game, one that could threaten her very own existence in the game, and she's very well aware of it, that if she does not take out one of these big players in Matt or Jerry, that she would be on the out of those 3 people in the game. I do think that her read here is extremely accurate and good, because Matt has been an absolute beast at immunities. She's obviously pretty good as well, but she wants to go up against Jerry and George at the end. That makes 100% sense for Liz, and she does approach George to talk to him about this, and she kind of tries to appeal to George's strategic mind in the game, saying that if you were to go to a final 3 with both Jerry and with Matt, they're going to take each other to the end, or at least Matt will take Jerry to the end, because we all know that Australian Survivor never mixes it up. They will always have an endurance challenge for the last immunity challenge, so it makes it very predictable who you would like to see at the end game. Similar to how Survivor US has the fire making challenge, the endurance challenge is something that George will have to get past. And I've been saying it on the podcast, I've been saying it on the top 5 takes. George is not winning the final immunity challenge, so he needs to be sitting next to someone in that final 3 spot that is going to win the endurance challenge and that will be willing to take him to the end game. So there's a lot of talk about how good George has been socially, how much of an entertainer he's been this season, but no matter how good he's been at all of these things, he's been terrible at managing, I think, his threat level, because it's going to catch up to him in the game. And maybe it's just because he has played such a great game. You can never have your cake and eat it too. You can't be good at everything. So, when you modify something in your game, like we see George talk about in this episode, as we get into takeaway number 3 here, something else might slip down the line. So takeaway number 3 is that George has to decide against social George from Heroes vs Villains versus strategic cutthroat George from Brains vs Brawn. Strategic cutthroat George was one that I admired so much. When he got to the end of that season, I was heartbroken for him that he couldn't win the season, when I thought he played the mastermind game of that season. But he learned from that, he took some lessons from it, and he came back this season working on that social bonds, building very strong bonds with Jerry. We see them having a conversation here in the beginning of the episode. There's a lot of talk about being friends for life outside of the game, and he really respects Jerry for his wisdom in, I think, life in general, and that is something that he wants to keep holding on to towards the end game. He's not as tied to Matt, because he knows Matt is someone that probably would be more willing to cut him in the game. So he has to decide between, does he care about these social bonds, does he care about keeping Jerry happy in the game, or does he make the best strategic decision for him at this point, which is to take Matt out. Matt is a very big threat to win that last challenge, and then go all in with Liz and Nina in the game, and hope that Liz or Nina would take take him to the end. I think he knows Nina probably wouldn't take him to the end either, but he is probably banking on Liz being that person that potentially could stay loyal to the OG Spice Girl Alliance and take him to the end game here in the spot. And by the end of this episode, we do see that he ends up leaning towards Social George and taking Nina out of the game. Some of this can be blamed on Nina herself. So as we move into takeaway number 4 here, Nina does get approached by both Liz and George during this episode. She has an option now that Liz wins the immunity. It means that Matt is in danger, and Liz does say, I want to work with you, you're my only option, I'm your only option, so let's move together in the game, get George involved. And she still scrambles quite a bit, and I think a reason for the fact that she scrambled and she goes to Matt and says that it's between you and me is the fact that she was legitimately trying to get Matt to maybe switch the vote on George in this spot in the games, because George isn't giving her assurances that she's definitely 100% safe. So because of that, she's scrambling. The news is getting out to Matt. Matt does confront both Liz and George, and both of them deny that this is a plan that is in the works. And you see George go and talk to her even at the water well after that, saying, hey, I'm still undecided, I still don't know where I can go. And he says that I need assurances that the people that are going to be on the beach are going to want to take me deeper into the game. And maybe this is a spot where Nina could have at least tried to fake it. She seems a bit too real, but she maybe should have said, hey, I'll take you to the final 2. I just want to get to the final 2. I don't want my torch to be snubbed. I want to be able to say, I had the full experience of the show. I know you've got the best resume. I know you'll probably win, but at least I can go back home with my head held high. I don't want to go at 5th spot. I want to get to the final tribal council. Maybe if she made a really strong case for George at that point, he would have felt comfortable enough to continue with Nina further into the game. But sadly, that conversation never happens before they go to tribal council. Now, takeaway number 5 is that at tribal council, sometimes you can say too much. And in this spot here, there is a question being asked about this alliance that continues to dominate the whole season so far, and they have been getting rid of all of the numbers. And George answers it, and he says that he was the person who put this alliance together. He was basically the captain of the ship, which Jerry kind of takes a little bit of an offense to, and again speaks up and says, well, we've all been making decisions in the game. We've all been working together. It's been a democracy in how this has worked. And Nina kind of calls out the fact that, listen, Jerry, and I think this is where she made a mistake. She still tried to get Jerry and Matt maybe to turn on George when she had like that slim chance that George may have voted with her. And we even get George, when he casts his vote, saying, at tribal council, you convinced me to change your vote because, to change my vote because you are a threat in the game. You're good at talking, and I don't think George should have been threatened 100% by Nina if he was to sit next to her at final tribal, but I think he was still worried that she would come for him in this next spot in the game, because clearly she knew Nina's the one person who was not snowed by him, I should say, and she's the one that knew if he gets to the end, he'll probably win this game very, very easily. And she brings up the whole thing that, Jerry collecting firewood, checking in on the vote, that's not you running a game or making a decision. The person that is hustling around in camp, counting the numbers, strategizing, and getting cross-tribal alliance people to work together to split a vote, that is the person who's running the game. So she clearly points out that George is the person that if he gets to the end, that will win this show. So as I finish my top 5 takes here for this episode, I do want to say I was quite low on a lot of people in my previous top 5 takes, and I said George and Nina are the only 2 people I want to win this game. That has now changed because Nina has voted out of the game. I want it to be Liz probably at this stage. I want Liz to win the next immunity challenge, because I think the worst outcome that we could have to this season is seeing Matt and Jerry play in the end game. When Nina placed her vote and she said that, I wanted you to be the player I know you could be, I think she spoke for the fandom. Everybody who knows that Matt is a big Survivor fan. He's someone that's wanted to be on the show for a while. He's on some of the online Facebook Survivor groups. I think people wanted to see Matt pull it off and play a better game, and he hasn't so far. He's been sitting back. Like they all said, they had the golden ticket, so they were happy to ride that until the end. That is a legitimate strategy, but it's not entertaining. It doesn't make me want to see a Matt or Jerry win this season at all. At least with Liz, she has been individually going against George and saying to George, you're making a mistake. Even in this episode, she's trying to appeal to his strategic side, the cutthroat side, saying you're getting too soft, and I feel like she is reading this situation correctly. I think George is in an immense amount of trouble going into this next round, because if Liz does win the next immunity, Matt and Jerry's not turning on each other. They're happy to vote George out. So I think he could very well go next. So I feel like the only saving grace we have to this season at this point is to get behind Liz. Ride the Liz train until the end, because at least we can say she was a part of the Spice Girls alliance. She did go over to the other tribe and had to survive a couple of rounds on her own, and she has been someone that at times was willing to go toe-to-go against George and at least challenge him in his decision-making thought process. So that is my top 5 takes here for this episode. If you do like this content, we're going to do some off-season content for Australian Survivor most likely in the coming weeks as well. Please consider subscribing, showing your support, hit the notification bell, and put a like on this video. That way I know that you want to see more of this type of content. Thank you so much for watching. Grab your torches, head back to camp. I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.